Hi YouTube, how are you doing? And welcome back to yet another video. So I kind of came across something today that I saw another YouTuber put a video out on, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit, not completely about that specific story, but more so about why you need to physically own gold and silver and not just have it on paper. But there's a story out right now about Oxford Gold Group, and there's a lot of complaints coming in right now how they just took the money from a lot of people and are just not, and they never sent the gold and silver to a trust or a depository or whatever, however that works. But there's an article on ABC 7 News where they talk about this, and there's a quick video that I'm gonna play from them. And it's just one of many stories about a guy, like many others, who lost a lot of money in this. So let's watch it real quick.
So much money, it's mind-boggling.
Grant Olson says he has sleepless nights and believes he will never see his money again.
It was all of my retirement, all of it. I took 200,000 out of my principal 401k and put it into this supposedly gold IRA.
He says he invested the money after hearing commercials about Oxford Gold Group in Beverly Hills. He says he did an online search and found it had good reviews.
All right, so I'm going to stop it right there because I want to go into a little bit about the reviews that they were talking about. So I have a couple sites pulled up that have some reviews and stuff pulled up from it. So Consumer Affairs, they had it at a 3.7 review. Trustpilot had it currently at a 1.9, but I do want to make it I want to make a very noticeable point here that a lot of these one-star reviews have come in within the last few months, especially around July and June and into maybe into May-ish. Somewhere around that time is when it all started. So a lot of these one-star reviews have kind of weighted down these 3.7 stars, 1.9, because if I'll prove it to you guys what I'm talking about. So these 1 stars you can see, these are all within the last month or so. So none of these 1-star reviews really ever kind of existed at the time, before all this kind of came out. I mean, if we go all the way to the last page, you can see kind of some of it in March. So somewhere around like March, April, I would probably say beginning of the year is when it really started. So a lot of these 1-star reviews aren't really 1-star reviews at the time for people who were believing that this was a legitimate company. I want to make that clear. It's not that it's 3.7 and 1.9, oh, that they look like they're not good. Yes, they look like that now, but at the time they did not. And so now I want to take it over to the BBB, the Better Business Bureau site, and these guys are currently at a 3.68, and I'm sure it's probably got the same similar things if we go into their complaints. You're probably going to see a lot of stuff. And going back into June, it had its accreditation revoked. So, about that time is when June and July, somewhere in this year is when it all really started. I think it kind of blew up around the June, July mark. But if we go into the reviews, you can see that a lot of these are recent. These 1-star reviews are very, very recent. But if we go in, I want to take us into I want to go into the complaint section because I want to show you guys what, like that guy in the video did, what a lot of people do. And I'm gonna kind of wrap this all together to make my point with everything. But if you see, and all this stuff is public, it's on the BBB site, so it's not like we're going into people's personal things. It is personal, but we're not. It's completely, it's for public eyes to view. You see people who have invested $11,000. There's people who transferred their 401k for over $141,000. There are people who invested $200,000, $25,000. You go down the list. People are dumping so much money into these gold IRAs. And I basically, my point that I want to make, and kind of what the whole title of this video, and I'm probably going to say it a couple times, is if you don't physically hold it, you don't own it. A lot of us in the gold and silver stacking community wholeheartedly believe that, but there are people out there who, there's people close to me who think that buying gold and silver, physically holding it, is stupid and silly, and that you're better off buying paper versions of it. Now, I want to go a little bit more into the concept of the gold IRAs, because there are companies out there that are legitimate, and the Oxford Group at the time probably seemed legitimate. And while I'm not making any recommendations, I'm not saying you should do something. I just want people to consider and think for a minute that when it comes to owning gold and silver on paper, because essentially that's what you're doing when you invest in these things. You own an ETF or a futures contract or whatever it is. You're not actually holding the physical metal. Instead, you're holding a claim to the metal. And that's where I think it can get tricky, because we saw the example where people had a claim to the metal, but they never were able to receive it. And one of my fears is that on this, like, when you're looking at this site right here, if we go back and think about what happened in 1933 when they did the gold confiscation, my thing is that I'm always concerned about is if I'm leaving it in a third party system where, let's say something happens in the future where they do something similar to this again. My fear is that if they set another requirement, and let's say you can't have more than 5 ounces of gold, then what happens to the other 5+ ounces that I've held in that ETF or whatever? I mean, it's going to be gone as far as I'm concerned. And if something happens where there's another government intervention like they did in 1933, my worry is that I could lose out on not ever seeing any sort of return on that money again, because I'm sure that those trusts and those depositories are going to have to comply with federal law. And so if anything, something like that happens in the future again, my fear is that you'll never be able to see those assets that you paid for. That's why I like to physically own the gold and silver, because it's mine. No one can take it away from me. Now, I'm not saying, federal, if there's ever another thing like that again, in that situation, I'd rather physically own it than have it be somewhere else. But again, I'm not saying people need to break laws, but I'm just saying if there was a situation, I'd rather be in possession and ownership of said things than have it be held somewhere else where someone else is going to comply with whatever that the federal government decides to push on. Now, owning physical gold and silver does come with some challenges like storage and security. I mean, especially with silver, especially how much you can stack with silver and how quickly those things can add up and take space as opposed to gold. But, there's always different strategies and things like that. But, I personally like to keep them in a safe at home. I'm not endorsing this specific safe or Liberty in general. I just wanted to pull up an image to show you guys like what I'm talking about. Keeping them in something like this at home where I know I have that peace of mind knowing that it's in a very secure place and I have access to it whenever I choose to want to have access to it. So there are benefits to having it maybe on paper. If you don't want to deal with the storage issues, I can understand that. But personally, I prefer to have them at home or somewhere where I know they will be, because I'd rather them not be somewhere else that I have no access to, especially if there is an SHTF scenario or something ridiculous like that. That's going to be all for today's video, guys. So, while paper, gold, and silver might seem convenient and easy, or an easy way to invest, they don't offer the same security and the peace of mind that physically owning the thing does. And if you're serious about protecting your wealth, I personally believe physical ownership of gold and silver is the way to go. I highly recommend you guys go on SD Bullion. They are awesome. But that's it for today's video. Again, guys, I'm going to close it out here with what I said earlier. And this is so true. If you don't physically hold it, you do not own it. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.